Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of sources, pull out the critical insights, and help you get informed fast.
Glad to be diving in.
Today, we are looking at some really fascinating, kind of intense material. It centers on a crisis aboard a starship, the Enterprise, facing a pretty impossible situation orbiting a dying planet.
That's right. The source material we've got here, it sets the scene with what seemed like a fairly routine assignment initially.
Right, just standard operations.
Pretty much, the Starship Enterprise was tasked to rendezvous with a science team. They were stationed down on a planet called Psi-2000.
And Psi-2000 wasn't exactly stable, was it?
No, not at all. The sources describe it as being in the process of disintegrating. Its sun was dying, the whole system was breaking down, so the mission was basically pick up the science team and then stick around to observe the planet's final moments. Scientific observation, you know.
Okay, bit grim maybe, watching a world die, but
yeah,
sounds straightforward enough on paper.
Exactly. But as the material makes crystal clear, things went sideways almost immediately, really fast.
So the landing party beams down, expecting to find the scientists packing their bags.
And instead, the initial discovery, it wasn't a science party waiting for pickup. It was the science party, but they were all dead.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it gets weirder. The reports mention that the life support systems were found switched off in their outpost.
Switched off? Why would they do that? Accident. Sabotage.
Well, that's the thing. It raises immediate questions, but it's the way they died that the reports really highlight as bizarre. Truly unusual, unexplained. The descriptions in the sources are vivid and unsettling.
How so? What did they find?
It wasn't like they just suffocated. The sources describe it almost as if they were frozen in place, completely oblivious to their own fate, caught right in the middle of, well, mundane activities.
Shows it like statues.
Almost. We're talking specifics here that are quite disturbing. The reports mention a woman found strangled, but her own hands were still locked around her throat.
Oh, what?
Yeah. An engineer frozen at his console, his expression just blank, like he didn't care, just died there. And maybe the strangest one, a man found dead in the shower, fully clothed, with the water still running over him.
Fully clothed in the shower. That goes beyond just dying from lack of air. There's something deeply wrong psychologically suggested there.
Absolutely. The material points towards some kind of profound psychological event happening alongside the physical deaths. It wasn't just system failure.
Right. And so naturally, this discovery flips the whole mission on its head. Observation goes out the window.
Instantly. It becomes an investigation and, frankly, a survival mission. What on earth happened down there on Psi-2000? Is whatever caused this still active? Is it confined to the planet?
And crucially, how do they make sure the ship, the Enterprise, and its crew are safe? That whatever this is doesn't come back with them.
Exactly. And you have to remember the backdrop for all this unfolding chaos. The ship is maintaining this incredibly tight, very low orbit around Psi-2000.
The disintegrating planet.
The actively disintegrating planet. The material keeps emphasizing this. Its gravitational fields, its magnetic fields, they're shifting wildly, unpredictably. Holding that orbit requires constant, delicate maneuvering. It's dangerous work, even when everything else is going perfectly.
It's a high stakes, technically, even before adding a deadly space mystery.
Precisely. So our deep dive today, using these sources, is all about unpacking this really bizarre sequence of events. We want to understand what the reports say happened down on Psi-2000, figure out how this strange influence, whatever it was, managed to get back onto the ship.
Right. How it spread.
How it impacted the crew, psychologically and physically, the desperate measures they had to take as the whole situation just spiraled out of control.
And you mentioned a surprising outcome.
Oh, yeah. What happens at the end is truly surprising and completely unintended, based on the reports.
Okay, let's get into it. Section 1 in our outline. The mystery and the contamination. So the trouble starts when the landing party comes back, right?
That's the first point of contact, according to the reports. The material specifically mentions Mr. Spock, the first officer, and a crewman, identified as Lieutenant Tourmalin, coming back aboard.
And they went through deconate. Standard procedure?
Yep, standard decontamination procedures were followed, but the material makes it pretty clear almost instantly that it wasn't enough. Something unseen, something insidious, had hitched a ride back with them.
So it wasn't picked up by the standard scans or cleaning protocols?
Apparently not. And the initial signs of this unknown influence, they were subtle. You might almost ignore them at first glance. But the reports show how quickly things escalated from there.
Starting with Tourmalin, you mentioned him. The sources call him Joe.
Yeah, in the command staff conversations recorded in the material, they refer to him informally as Joe Tormelin. After he gets back from the planet, he starts showing signs of pretty severe distress, intense self-doubt. It's quite dramatic.
What do the medical logs say? Dr. McCoy must have examined him.
McCoy's logs are detailed in the material. They note that Joe, physically, well, the report indicates some intestinal damage, probably from whatever happened down there, but nothing that should have been immediately fatal. Not for someone described as having his kind of constitution.
But he died anyway.
He did, and Dr. McCoy's clinical assessment, as it's recorded in the sources, is that Joe essentially just gave up.
Gave up. That sounds incredibly unscientific for a doctor. It suggests something was broken inside him, mentally.
It really does. And the medical logs, they underline just how out of character this was for Lieutenant Tormelin. McCoy explicitly states in the material something like, that kind of man doesn't give up. He was known for his resilience, apparently.
So what was happening to him before he died? This agitation you mentioned.
The reports detail his behavior becoming more and more agitated. He started verbalizing these really deep-seated doubts, questioning the whole point of their mission, of Starship exploration itself.
Questioning Starfleet's purpose.
Yeah. The reports capture some of his actual words, very distraught stuff, like, what are we doing out here anyway? He expressed this profound sense of hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy? About what?
Feeling that they, Starfleet, humanity, were just polluting space, destroying things, that they didn't belong out there among the stars, that they only brought pain and trouble wherever they went.
Wow. That's a heavy burden to suddenly feel. So it wasn't just physical symptoms. It was like an attack on his core beliefs, his whole identity as an officer.
Precisely. It went right to his psychological core. The material describes him becoming visibly self-tortured by these thoughts. It got so bad, the reports mention him actually grabbing a knife at one point.
Seriously, he was contemplating self-harm.
It seems so. He was consumed by this overwhelming sense of unworthiness, kept asking why he deserved to live when the science party down on the planet had died. The sources paint this really grim picture of a man whose deepest, most painful internal struggles were just being violently ripped out into the open.
That's terrifying. And the truly alarming thing the reports then make clear is this wasn't just limited to him, right? It wasn't just the guys who went down to the planet.
No, that's the scary part. It started spreading throughout the ship. We hear about another crew member, Lieutenant Kevin Thomas Riley. He works down in engineering.
And what happened to him?
The material describes this sudden, really dramatic personality shift. He starts acting erratically, becomes incredibly boisterous, almost arrogant, even delusional, started proclaiming he was a descendant of Irish kings.
Irish kings.
Yeah.
An engineering officer.
Yeah, completely out of the blue. And his behavior, it wasn't just talk. The reports detail him making these strange, nonsensical pronouncements. And then critically, he actually takes over a bridge station, starts interfering with ship operations.
Takes over a bridge station. How?
The details aren't totally clear, but things were starting to get chaotic. He just did it. And the material even captures some of his bizarre statements. Things like, let the women work too, universal suffering, just weird, disruptive stuff. A complete break from his normal professional conduct.
Okay, so Tormelin's guilt and despair, Riley's. Delusions of grandeur. Anyone else mentioned specifically?
Yes, Mr. Sulu, the helmsman. Normally very calm, very controlled. The reports say he showed an equally drastic and frankly alarming change in personality.
Sewer. What did he do?
The material describes him transforming into something like an 18th century swashbuckler.
A swashbuckler. You're kidding.
Not kidding. He apparently abandoned his post at the helm, somehow got hold of a sword or fencing foil, specifically mentioned, and was seen running through the corridors brandishing it.
Running around with a sword.
Yes, the reports detail him actually chasing other crewmen, completely caught up in this vivid fantasy, declaring he needed to protect some fair maiden.
Wow. Okay. This is a level of dramatic, almost theatrical behavior that's totally alien to the Sulu we usually see in these reports. Disciplined, focused.
Orderly alien. So you've got this growing chaos, these bizarre individual personality breaks spreading from person to person. And amidst all this, the reports indicate a crucial observation was finally made.
They started seeing a pattern.
Exactly. The medical staff, the command staff, they realized this wasn't causing some kind of generic madness or confusion. The symptoms weren't uniform across everyone who got infected. Instead, the material suggests this unknown influence was acting like a catalyst. It was forcing hidden personality traits, maybe suppressed emotions, secret fantasies, deep-seated anxieties, forcing them to the surface.
So it wasn't making them crazy. It was unlocking something already inside them.
That's one of the most fascinating insights from these sources, I think. It fits the examples, right? Lieutenant Tormola, maybe he always carried some degree of self-doubt, some ethical questions about their mission. This thing amplified it into overwhelming guilt, self-destruction.
And Riley.
Lieutenant Riley, maybe deep down he harbored suppressed desires for grandeur, for attention, maybe felt overlooked. Suddenly, boom, he sees himself as royalty and tries to take control.
And Sulu's inner swashbuckler. Maybe he just really liked adventure stories.
Could be. Perhaps a hidden love for romantic adventure, Zorro, that kind of thing. And this influence just let it burst out. The material strongly suggests this contamination, whatever it was, somehow dismantled the individual's learned self-control, their discipline, their inhibitions. It allowed the deepest, often hidden aspects of their personality to just seize control.
It's like it didn't create the changes. It just unmasked what was already there. Buried under layers of Starfleet training, duty, social conditioning, maybe even just politeness.
Exactly. Like peeling back layers. It raises this really profound question, doesn't it? How much of our everyday behavior, our personality as others see it, is actively suppressed or controlled? This unknown substance, this molecule, whatever it is, the report suggests it targets the very centers of judgment and self-control in the brain, just stripping away inhibition.
And all of this psychological chaos is unfolding, while the Enterprise is in that incredibly precarious physical situation, needing peak performance from everyone.
Which, naturally, leads us right into the next major phase described in the sources: escalation and crisis on the Enterprise.
Right, because things go from weird and worrying to potentially catastrophic very quickly.
They do. The reports make it painfully clear that the situation with the planet Psi-2000 is deteriorating rapidly. The material keeps hammering this point home. The ship's orbit is critical, it's tight, it's low.
The planet's falling apart.
Exactly. It's shrinking, its internal dynamics are going haywire, throwing off gravity waves, magnetic fluctuations, completely unpredictably. Just maintaining their position requires constant, precise adjustments from the helm and engines. It demands absolute efficiency, instant response from the crew at the controls.
The margin for error must have been vanishingly small.
Vanishingly small. The reports describe it as rapidly shrinking towards zero. And this, of course, is precisely when the internal crisis, the contamination crisis, reaches its absolute peak. And it largely centers on Lieutenant Riley.
The Irish king from engineering.
The very same. The reports detail how he doesn't just act strangely on the bridge. He becomes the central, immediate threat to the ship's actual survival. He manages, somehow, to get into the engine room.
The engine room. The heart of the ship. How did he manage that with everything going on? Security should have been heightened.
The reports aren't entirely explicit on the step-by-step, but they indicate this general breakdown in security. Order was spreading fast. People weren't acting rationally. Procedures were failing. The material simply states he gained control of the engine room, locked out other personnel, including his superiors.
Locked them out of engineering.
Yes. And once he's in control there, he uses that position to start cutting off vital ship systems. The sources detail him deliberately cutting off helm control from the bridge.
No steering.
No steering. They can't maneuver the ship at all. And even worse, he disables main power. Shuts it down.
He cut main power. While they're in a decaying orbit around a collapsing planet, that's a death sentence.
It is. Absolutely catastrophic. With the helm disabled, main power offline, the ship completely loses its ability to fight the orbital decay, to maintain its delicate position. The reports describe the Enterprise immediately starting to spiral downwards, deeper into the planet's rapidly thickening upper atmosphere.
Oh, God. It'd burn up.
Exactly. The material notes the ship starting to heat up rapidly from atmospheric friction, hull temperature climbing, alarms going off. The clock is ticking down relentlessly. The reports detailed the command crew getting these terrible estimates of time remaining before the ship burns up initially. It's cited as less than 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
And that estimate keeps shrinking fast, with every passing moment as they fall faster and the friction increases.
And it wasn't just Riley causing problems, right? The contamination was spreading everywhere.
Yes, the reports make that clear too. It's not just the engine room and the bridge that are compromised. The material describes the contamination causing widespread issues all over the ship. Security reports detailed in the sources indicate this rapid increase in incidents everywhere.
Like what?
Fights breaking out between crew members, general disorder, people just not following orders, acting irrationally, escalating chaos on multiple decks. They try to initiate shipwide alert systems, containment protocols, things like that.
But Riley stops them.
But the reports show these attempts are cut off. They fail, which demonstrates the alarming extent of Riley's control from the engine room. He's not just messing with power and helm, he's somehow able to override or block vital ship functions, communications, security systems.
He's basically holding the entire ship hostage from the engine room while it's falling out of the sky.
Pretty much. And adding to the sheer terror and, frankly, the absurdity of the whole situation, the reports detail the bizarre things Riley is doing from the engine room. He's using the ship's internal communication system, which he apparently also controls now.
To do what? Gloat. Make demands.
To issue these strange overriding orders to the entire crew over the ship-wide comms.
What kind of orders?
The material actually captures some of them. He's demanding things like double rations of ice cream for the entire crew.
Ice cream. While they're about to burn up.
Ice cream. And even more strangely, he's issuing instructions on how female crew members should present themselves.
What? Like a dress code?
Yeah. Specifying things like hair loosely about shoulders and demanding restraint in makeup, stating that, quote, women should not look made up.
So even in the middle of causing this ship-wide catastrophe, these deeply repressed, kind of bizarre control issues or personal preferences are manifesting through the contamination.
Exactly. It really highlights how this influence doesn't just cause generic chaos or violence. It unlocks very specific, often deeply unsettling aspects of the individual's suppressed psyche. Their hidden stuff comes pouring out.
That's wild.
And if that weren't enough to disrupt things, the reports also mention him singing loudly and poorly over the ship's channel.
Singing? What was he singing?
The tune, I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen, is specifically noted in the material, just broadcasting it across the ship, further disrupting any attempt the command crew might be making to organize a response or even just communicate effectively.
It sounds like a complete nightmare scenario unfolding.
Uh-huh.
A complex, high-tech starship is plummeting towards destruction around a dying planet.
While its crew is succumbing one by one to this bizarre psychological contagion that unlocks their inner demons.
Led by an engineer singing terrible old songs and demanding specific hairstyles and ice cream from the engine room, he's barricaded himself inside.
The material really conveys that sense of utter helplessness, the bizarre absurdity mixed with mortal terror, and this desperate race against the clock.
It absolutely does. You can feel the pressure on the command staff, trying to solve an impossible technical problem while their tools, their crew, are breaking down psychologically all around them.
And as you touched on earlier, this contamination, it affects everyone it touches, even those you might think would be immune. The most disciplined, the most controlled.
Which I suppose brings us to the section in the sources titled Spock's Personal Battle. Because the material makes it abundantly clear that even Mr. Spock, the ship's first officer, famous for his Vulcan logic, his suppression of emotion, even he isn't immune to this thing.
No, he isn't. And this section of the reports, it's particularly insightful, both into Spock's own character, the duality he lives with, and into the sheer power of this contamination.
So what happens? How does it affect him?
The material details this profoundly emotional breach that occurs. It happens during an interaction he has with Nurse Christine Chapel.
Nurse Chapel. The reports indicate she has, perhaps unspoken feelings for Spock.
That's the context provided, yes.
Yeah.
And under the influence of this contaminant, the suppressed human side of Spock's nature, the side he works so incredibly diligently to control, to keep buried under Vulcan logic, it's brought forcefully, painfully to the surface.
Can you describe that moment? What did the sources say happened?
The reports describe Spock struggling, visibly, intensely struggling. He actually expresses feelings of love for Nurse Chapel, a statement that is just utterly contrary to his normal, conscious Vulcan persona.
He says he loves her. Out loud.
The sources record him expressing those feelings.
Yeah.
And more than that, the material captures him saying things to her like how others must hurt you, torture you.
Hurt you, torture you. What does that imply?
It's fascinating, isn't it? It implies maybe an awareness, an understanding of her own emotional pain or struggle, perhaps related to her unrequited feelings for him. It suggests his suppressed empathy, maybe even his own hidden pain regarding their complicated dynamic is being exposed by this contaminant. It's raw.
It's his human house. The party keeps locked down tight, finally breaking through the Vulcan control.
Precisely. And the reports detail his explicit struggle against this breakthrough. You can almost hear the internal battle happening in the fragmented way his dialogue is captured in the material. He says things like, I am in control of my emotions. Control. I am an officer. My duty is to... I'm sorry.
That's not a coherent thought. That's him fighting himself, trying to reassert the Vulcan discipline over the emotional flood.
It's exactly that, a desperate attempt to cling to his training, his identity, his sense of duty against this overwhelming emotional tide he's not equipped to handle, or at least doesn't allow himself to handle.
And the material notes he has a specific method for trying to regain control, right? It wasn't just willpower.
That's right. It wasn't some complex Vulcan meditation technique we hear about sometimes. It was something almost basic, primal in its focus. The reports describe him attempting to fight the emotional effect by reciting numbers aloud.
Just reciting numbers.
Specifically, 2, 2, 4, 6, 6, 6 times 6. Just repeating them.
Why those numbers? Is it significant?
It doesn't seem random. The implication is it's a deliberate act, forcing his mind to focus on logic, on mathematical sequence, on something purely intellectual and unemotional, like finding an anchor for his rational self in the middle of this storm of feeling he's experiencing.
It really shows the immense effort it took for him just to regain a semblance of control. It underscores how powerful this influence must be if it can crack through even his legendary Vulcan discipline.
Absolutely. If Spock is vulnerable, then truly no one on the ship is safe from having their deepest selves exposed. It emphasizes that this contamination targets the very core of psychological control, finding and exploiting those suppressed aspects, regardless of your species, your training, your willpower.
A terrifying thought. But while all this is happening, the ship falling, Riley singing, Spock fighting his own emotions, the reports also detailed the parallel effort, the scientific one. They were trying to figure this out, right?
Yes, absolutely. Which brings us to the scientific breakthrough. While the command crew is dealing with the operational nightmare, the material details Dr. McCoy and his medical team working absolutely desperately down in sickbay. They're trying to find the cause, any cause, for this bizarre illness.
What were they doing? Running tests?
Nonstop. The reports show the medical team running intensive tests on the affected crew members they could get their hands on, like Sulu, analyzing blood samples, running bioscans, checking metabolic functions, looking for any anomaly, any virus, any toxin, any alien microbe that could explain the sudden, drastic changes in behavior, and also the weird physical symptoms like the intestinal damage seen in Tourmaline.
And what did they find? What was the culprit identified in the reports? This must be where the breakthrough happens.
It is. And the key breakthrough, according to the bioanalysis detailed in the medical reports, is both incredibly simple on the surface and utterly unexpected given all the high drama. The cause is water.
Water. Are you serious? All of that chaos, the swashbuckling, the Irish Kings, the emotional breakdowns caused by water, not some exotic space play.
Well, not just any water. That's the crucial part, as the material explains. It's the nature of the water from Sci 2000.
What was different about it?
Likely because of the intense, unique environmental conditions on that planet, tearing itself apart, bombarded by radiation from its dying sun, the water there had undergone a significant molecular change. Its actual chemical structure was fundamentally altered. It wasn't standard H2O anymore, not quite.
Okay, so altered water, a complex water molecule maybe. What does the material say this stuff does once it gets into your system, into the bloodstream?
The reports make a very clear analogy based on McCoy's findings. This altered water, once it's ingested or absorbed, acts physiologically very much like alcohol.
Like alcohol, it gets you drunk.
Not exactly drunk in the typical sense. Its primary effect specifically is to depress the higher brain centers, the ones responsible for judgment, for inhibition, for self-control. It doesn't necessarily cause the slurred speech or motor impairment of heavy intoxication, at least not primarily. Its main impact is removing those psychological barriers.
So that's why it was bringing out those hidden personality traits we talked about. It was chemically lowering everyone's psychological defenses, letting the subconscious stuff out.
Exactly. The material provides the chemical basis for the psychological effects they were witnessing shipwide. It wasn't magic, it was biochemistry targeting the brain's control centers.
Okay, that makes sense. But how did it spread so fast? If it was water, did they all drink from a contaminated tank? Deacon should have caught that.
That's the other crucial piece of the puzzle they uncovered, according to the reports. It wasn't primarily spreading through drinking contaminated water reserves. They discovered that this altered water passes from person to person primarily through perspiration.
Perspiration? You mean just sweating? Someone sweats near you and you can get infected.
Yes. The reports indicate that simply being in proximity to someone who is infected and sweating, maybe they touch you, maybe just airborne moisture in close quarters, is enough to transfer the contaminated water through skin contact or inhalation.
Wow. Okay.
This detail, found in the medical logs, is critical. It explains why the outbreak was so sudden, so widespread, overwhelming the crew so quickly despite their standard decontamination efforts for the landing party.
Because standard deacon focuses on surface contaminants, maybe microbes, radiation, not something that could be transmitted through sweat, through the air, just by being close to someone. It bypassed all their normal safeguards.
Precisely. It was an unexpected vector. But now, based on this detailed bioanalysis, understanding it was altered water acting like alcohol, transmitted by sweat, Dr. McCoy's team was finally able to isolate a serum, a counteragent.
They developed a cure.
The reports confirmed the development and successful testing of this serum. The material states quite unequivocally that the serum works. They now had a way to reverse the effects of the altered water. So right in the middle of the technical and psychological chaos, a scientific answer, a solution was found.
Okay, that's huge news from sickbay.
Mm.
But finding the cure is only half the battle, isn't it? They still have to administer it to everyone, including Riley in the locked engine room, and the ship is still minutes away from becoming a fireball.
Exactly. They have the what and the why and the how to fix it, but they're running out of when. Which leads us directly into the final desperate phase, the desperate gamble and the outcome.
And the material really hammers home just how desperate things are at this point.
Absolutely. The reports describe the Enterprise as being critically close to the planet, deep inside its atmosphere now, and heating up fast, dangerously fast. Those estimates for time remaining, they become grimly precise and shrinking with alarming speed. The reports note the command crew hearing the countdown drop from maybe 8 minutes left down to 6. Then suddenly, just 4 minutes before catastrophic structural failure, before they burn up completely.
4 minutes, and the engines are still dead.
Completely cold. Riley shut them down.
Yeah.
And the reports state clearly, under normal procedures, it would take at least 30 minutes to regenerate main power, warm up the matter-antimatter reaction chamber, and achieve useful thrust. 30 minutes.
Time they absolutely do not have. They have maybe 4. They're effectively moments away from total destruction with no conventional way left to escape the planet's gravity well.
Correct. It looks completely hopeless. And it's right here, in this seemingly impossible no-win situation, that Mr. Spock proposes a solution. The reports suggest he might still be wrestling with the lingering effects of the contamination himself, but his logical mind comes through.
He finds a way out.
He proposes a way out, a last-ditch effort. Highly theoretical, incredibly risky. He suggests a controlled implosion within the engine core.
Controlled implosion, that sounds bad. Explosions usually push things. How does an implosion help them get away?
It sounds counterintuitive, right? But the reports describe his theory. It involves balancing matter and antimatter cold.
Cold. Don't they react violently?
Normally, yes. Under precise containment fields, they react to create energy for warp drive. Spock's theory, as presented in the material, involves bringing them together essentially without the normal startup sequence, without the standard containment, aiming for a very precise, simultaneous annihilation. The idea is this would create a sudden vacuum, an implosion, that could theoretically generate a massive, instantaneous pulse of energy, enough to restart the engines instantly and provide thrust. The keywords are control and cold reaction, not a standard hot engine ignition.
Okay, theoretically. But the reports emphasize the risk involved. This doesn't sound like something they've tried before.
Oh, absolutely not. The material cannot stress enough the unprecedented level of risk here. This maneuver has never been attempted, ever. It exists purely as a theoretical concept in physics models.
So no practical tests, no simulations run under these conditions.
None. The reported odds of success, even if they had time for proper calculations and computer modeling, which they absolutely do not, are estimated at something like 10,000 to 1, against it working.
10,000 to 1 against. And they have to do the math on the fly, under pressure.
Exactly. They have to perform complex calculations right there on the bridge, with seconds ticking away under immense stress, and then relay that formula down to engineering, hoping someone down there is lucid enough, or maybe injected with the new serum quick enough to execute it immediately and manually.
And if it goes wrong, if the implosion isn't controlled.
Failure isn't just, it doesn't work and we burn up anyway. The reports are starkly clear. Failure, messing up the matter-antimatter balance like that, would result in the biggest explosion imaginable. Instant annihilation of the ship. Gone.
So Captain Kirk is faced with this choice. Certain, agonizing destruction by burning up in about 4 minutes. Or risking immediate, complete annihilation on a cosmic scale based on a wild theory with astronomical odds against it.
That is precisely the impossible dilemma the material describes him facing. The reports show Kirk grappling with it, the weight of the decision. But ultimately, his trust in Spock's intellect, his logic, even under these extreme circumstances, wins out. He gives the order, attempt the untested implosion.
They call the formula down to engineering.
They do. The tension described in the material during these moments is just palpable. You can imagine the silence on the bridge as the seconds tick away towards that 4-minute deadline.
And what happens? Does the impossible gamble pay off? Do the engines restart?
The reports describe the maneuver being executed down in engineering. And
Yeah.
yes, against all odds, the risky gamble works. The engines respond, they get power.
They made it.
They made it out of the immediate fire, yes, but something completely unexpected happens next. The material describes the ship's velocity gauge suddenly going wild, not just showing warp speed, but going completely off the scale. Engine power readings also go off the scale.
Off the scale, what does that mean?
It means they aren't just moving faster than light in the way warp drive normally works. According to the reports, they find themselves traveling faster than is possible for normal space.
Faster than possible. That sounds reality-breaking.
Yeah.
Like they didn't just get out of orbit, they punched a hole in physics.
That's a good way to put it. The material explains the outcome isn't merely a successful escape from Psi-2000's atmosphere. The energy release from that controlled implosion, combined with the weird space-time conditions near the dying star maybe, it resulted in a time warp.
A time warp. Seriously.
Seriously. The reports state explicitly that the ship's chronometers, the clocks, suddenly begin running backward, rapidly, indicating the ship itself has regressed in time.
Whoa. So a desperate last-second engineering maneuver to escape a dying planet accidentally threw them backward through time.
That is the incredible, completely unintended consequence described in the sources. The final result detailed in the reports is that the Enterprise is sent back a very specific amount of time. 71 hours.
71 hours. That's almost exactly 3 days.
Effectively, yes. 3 days into their past, back to a point before the crisis on Psi-2000 had fully developed and spread through the ship.
Wow. So they survived by basically getting a do-over, hitting reset on the whole disaster.
Exactly. The reports conclude with them finding themselves back in normal time and space, safe, having survived the immediate threat of burning up. But more importantly, they now possess all the critical knowledge they gained during that original erased timeline.
They know about the water.
They know the cause is the altered water from Psi-2000. They know it acts like alcohol, stripping inhibitions. They know it spreads through perspiration.
And they have the cure.
And crucially, Dr. McCoy's team, based on the knowledge from the future, already has the serum developed and knows it works. They are prepared this time around to deal with the contamination safely and effectively before it ever gets out of hand.
That's incredible. And did the reports mention what they thought about the time travel itself?
Yes, there's a final note on that. The material mentions Mr. Spock's reaction to this accidental outcome. He apparently saw intriguing possibilities, suggested that this accidental time warp, triggered by the cold matter-antimatter implosion, might actually provide the theoretical basis for developing intentional time travel in the future, using that technique deliberately.
So a potential breakthrough in time travel science, born from a near-death 10,000 to 1 engineering Hail Mary. That is quite the unexpected silver lining to a mission gone horribly wrong.
Indeed it is. It really wraps up the whole arc described in the sources from finding a deadly, unexplained event on a dying planet, which then spreads to cause a ship-wide breakdown of control and personality, only to be saved at the last second by a highly theoretical gamble that results in the surprising, unintended consequence of accidental time travel, effectively giving them a second chance.
Okay, let's try and recap the key takeaways from this deep dive into the source material, because there's a lot there. First, it really hits on how something we think of as simple, fundamental like water can be drastically changed by extreme environmental conditions.
Right, like those on a planet literally tearing itself apart. And that change gave it these profound, unexpected biological effects. It wasn't some complex alien virus they fought. It was fundamentally altered H2O messing with brain chemistry.
Second takeaway for me is that startling revelation about our hidden selves. You know, those suppressed emotions, the secret fantasies Sulu acted out, Riley's delusions, Tormolen's deep guilt, even Spock's buried Hume feelings.
Yeah, the idea that these aspects of our personality, things usually kept under wraps by discipline or training or just societal norms, can be forced violently to the surface by external pressures or contaminants, and sometimes with devastating consequences, both for the individuals and everyone around them.
Third, the sources really underscored the extreme lengths people, well, humans and Vulcans in this case, are willing to go to for survival. Facing certain doom, they didn't just give up. They were willing to push way beyond the boundaries of known physics, known engineering theory.
Absolutely. Attempting something that had literally never been done, with almost zero chance of success according to their own science, rather than just accepting their fate, that desperation drove innovation, in a way.
And that leads to the final point, right? The incredible, often unpredictable consequences of pushing those boundaries. The solution they found for the immediate crisis, that implosion, it didn't just achieve its intended purpose of escaping the planet.
No, it resulted in something far more extraordinary, completely unintended: time displacement. It accidentally opened up entirely new realms of scientific possibility, like intentional time travel.
It really does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About the world around us. Given how easily a seemingly simple substance like water, just by being altered by specific environmental conditions, could peel back all those layers of personality and control. It makes you wonder.
What other factors might be influencing us?
Yeah. What other environmental factors in our own daily lives, maybe less dramatic than a dying planet, hopefully might be subtly influencing our behavior, or maybe suppressing aspects of who we really are without us even realizing it? Food additives, environmental pollutants, maybe even just constant background noise.
That's a deep thought. And expanding on that, if surviving a crisis by pushing the absolute limits of known science could accidentally unlock something as profound as travel through time, what other unforeseen possibilities, other revolutionary breakthroughs, might be lying just beyond the edge of our current scientific understanding?
Maybe the biggest discoveries aren't always planned in a lab.
Maybe not. Perhaps they come from those desperate moments, those unexpected crises that force us to gamble, to push into the complete unknown. It's definitely something to think about.
Absolutely. A lot to chew on from this deep dive into one very, very bizarre mission gone wrong and then unexpectedly right again.